So we're gonna speak about something general, and this is there are three types of mitzvahs that we can perform. Can perform, or that we can see that throughout history were performed. Not always one person can do all these three types of mitzvahs, but there are three types of mitzvahs in general. And one of them is the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the 7 Noahide laws. And the second type is the mitzvahs that our forefathers did. Our forefathers, before Matan Torah, they used to perform all the mitzvahs like it says in the Gemara, in the Seftas Kiddushin. This is something that the Gemara itself speaks about. So that was one type of mitzvah. And then we have the mitzvahs that we keep today. After Matan Torah, the mitzvahs that each and every one of us does today, what is the geder of this mitzvah? What is the type of this mitzvah? And we will also take a look at a few details and the difference between them. So it says, and the Midrash actually tells us, L'reach shmonecha toivim shemen turak shemecha. That is from Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs. And it says that the smell of the oil, L'reach shmonecha toivim, the smell of the oil is good. Shemen turak shemecha, your name is like oil. And this, the Midrash tells us that this is the difference between the mitzvahs that were done before Matan Torah to the mitzvahs that were done afterwards. All of the mitzvahs that were performed before Matan Torah, they were done by our forefathers. So they are considered l'reach shmonecha tovim. They are considered to be like smell. The reach shmonecha, the smell of the shemen, of the perfume, whatever it is, that oil, that ointment, whatever it might be, they are considered to the smell. Which means there is not always ever a long existence to that mitzvah. It's like smell. Smell fades away. So the mitzvahs that the forefathers did, yes, they performed the mitzvah. But imagine, think about it, there was no kedusha, no holiness attached to their mitzvah that was everlasting. So the concept of geniza, we're all familiar with geniza, right? That if you do have tefillin that are non-kosher, you can't just throw them out. You have to put them in geniza, in a place where they, at the end of the day, it goes and it's buried. Why is that? Where does that come from? It's because it's a chayfetz of kedusha. It's an object that contains holiness in it. It's a different object. It's not like just leather in general. It's not like a leather shoe. It's a leather. It's a holy leather, a holy piece of leather.
Is this non-kosher?
Sorry?
Is it non-kosher?
No, it has to be kosher. Has to be kosher. It doesn't have to be shechted. This is something that they teach the kids in bar mitzvah. When the kids, sometimes when they come to bar mitzvah and they come from families that are very much, into saving or not killing animals and, saving the planet and things like that. So we always say that Judaism is the first religion that came up with the idea of michzur, to what's the word?
Recycle.
Recycle, yeah. And where's the example? The tefillin, they are made out of skin and leather of animals that died naturally. You don't have to shecht the animal in order to make tefillin out of them. It could be an animal that just died, sorry.
Nevele.
Nevela, yeah. It just has to be from a kosher animal. But it could be a nevela as well. So we always tell them that we are the first ones. No, it could be. It's not should be. If a person wants to shecht, it also can be shechted. But you can also use the nevela, something that died naturally, And then we're not throwing it to waste. We're using it for something holy, something of Kedusha. But back to the point here that we see in the mitzvah is that we are L'reach shmonecha tovim shemen turak shemecha. We are on the side of the shemen turak shemecha, the oil that is connected to the name, that never fades away, never goes away. This is not just ointment or something like that that fades with time. The mitzvahs of our forefathers, so it had their sense of holiness, of inspiration, but it's like any inspiration, that a day or two goes by, and that's it. And then the person is already relaxed, he's already chilled, he's much more calm, and it's not machzik. It's a lot tofes. It doesn't continue. So that was the type of the mitzvahs of our forefathers. Again, not to say that there's anything bad about that, but it's hard to make something physical and material into something holy. It's not that the Avos were lacking something in their Avodas Hashem. They were the first ones to introduce the idea of Avodas Hashem, of doing mitzvahs. But to come up with such an innovation that a mitzvah that a person does, a good deed, is forever lasting, that is a big innovation. That's a big chiddush. So it doesn't just apply automatically. For that, we mamash have to have a reason to say that it works that way. That if we just do one mitzvah, one time a person puts on tefillin, not for every day of his life, once, that's it. That becomes holy, and there's nothing that can change. The example that is brought in the Zohar actually is that Yaakov Avinu, we know that he left Lavan very, very wealthy. And the Torah tells us the details of how did he do it. He placed these sticks and he painted them in a certain color, and that's how the sheep turned out to be in that color. But apparently, by doing those sticks, he also performed the mitzvah of tefillin. Because what is tefillin? Shiabud hamoyach v'halev. Hamoyach v'halev. Connecting our mind and heart to Hashem. So does it matter how exactly you do it? L'chayra, it doesn't matter. We can also do that in ways that are not to wrap straps around us, around our arms. What about a person that sits all day, not all day, but for 3 hours, and he thinks about Shiabud hamoyach v'halev, and he thinks about Yetzias Mitzrayim, and he thinks about all the kavanas that we should have when we put on tefillin. Does he fulfill the mitzvah? He's not wearing the actual tefillin. But what he does is, he has in mind all of the kavanas of tefillin, the intentions that a person should have while he puts on tefillin. So it's interesting. Today, that would not be considered a mitzvah. But in the times of the Avos, it was, because in the times of Avos, it's like perfume. It's like the environment. Person was in a vibe of a mitzvah. He went to a retreat, a spiritual retreat. Spiritual retreat was considered to be a mitzvah then. Today, it's not considered to be a mitzvah. Today, we have to do what is called hama'aseh hu ha'ikar, the actual physical object.
מעשה אבות סימן לבנים.
Yes.
So you can eventually.
Oh, so I'll give you an example where the Maaseh Avot Siman Labanim, bris milah. That's why Avraham Avinu he waited until the age of 99 until he actually did the bris. Why didn't he do the bris before? He wanted to connect to Hashem, and the bris is so...
He was not ordered.
But other mitzvahs also he wasn't ordered. Why to wait until the order of Hashem? So what it says in Chassidus is that he wanted the order of Hashem because here was not like any other mitzvah that he did before. All the mitzvahs that he did before were spiritual. The environment of a mitzvah. Bris milah was in the flesh, in the basar. So for that, it has an influence on the material part of the world. He had to wait for a special command from Hashem. Because a special command from Hashem means that now you can actually change my world. You can actually make a difference, cause a difference. It's interesting because we know that there are mitzvahs d'oraisa And there are mitzvahs derabanan. The mitzvahs d'oraisa, what we read in the Torah, 613 mitzvahs. There are several ways to count these mitzvahs. We have the Rambam's counting. We have the, if I'm not mistaken, this Rabbi Saadia Gaon, the Rasag, his counting. We've got the Chinuch, Sefer HaChinuch, who also has his own counting. Each one counted them differently. The differences are very minor, not many differences. And then there is mitzvahs derabanan. What is a mitzvah derabanan? All the Gdarim, all the Siyagim, when we open Masechtas Shabbos. So you can see in Masechtas Shabbos what it says is there's the 39 Avos Malachas. And then they have also the Toldos. And then there is what Rabbanan said, be aware, be very much aware of this in this case scenario, because you never know, that might lead, one thing might lead to the other. And a person turned on electricity, for example, right? That's a whole discussion. Whether it's d'oraisa or d'Rabbanan, it's not that simple. Not everyone claims that it's d'oraisa. So, what is the fundamental difference between the two? Mitzvahs d'oraisa, they have to do with the hefza of the mitzvah. Mitzvahs d'Rabbanan, they have to do with the gavra. In the yeshivish world, there's always a discussion about in many sugyas. Soloveitchik, right, exactly. He likes to bring that chakir a lot. Is it a hefza or is it a gavra? What's the difference? Hefza and gavra. Hefza means the object. Gavra means the man, the personnel. Sometimes when we say there's a certain law, so it's not about the object, it's about me performing. Okay, so when it comes to Shabbos, trying to find a good example for the Hefza.
Shiluach HaKen.
Right, so we'll take that mitzvah for example. Shiluach HaKen, or the mitzvah of Lulav and Esrog. So when I put, or the mitzvah of Matzah. Is it about the object of the matzah itself that is holy? Or is it about me being obligated to eat the matzah? The second one. So roughly speaking, the mitzvahs that are d'oraisa from the Torah, the written Torah, they are more about the object. The mitzvahs that are d'Ravana, that the rabbis didn't have enough power to turn the object into something holy. What they were able to do, they were able to apply a restriction on you as the personnel, as the person that is dealing with the Shabbos or with any other thing around. So in electricity, it's not that electricity itself is a problem. You are not allowed to use electricity on Shabbos. But it's not that the electricity itself is problematic. And likewise, on the positive side, when it comes to certain mitzvahs, I'm trying to find... So if we take, for example, Hanukkah, it's interesting because when it comes to Hanukkah, there is holiness in the oil. That's why if you used oil and you used the ptilot, so on Zos Hanukkah, you have to burn them. You're not allowed to use them for anything else because it has a hefta shel kedusha. But generally speaking, when it comes to the prohibitions of the Rabbanan don't have the koyach. Let's say Orla. Orla, for example, that is something d'oraisa. In Israel, it applies. The first 3 years of a tree, you're not allowed to use it. What does it mean that I'm not allowed to use it? Is it a restriction on me? Or does it mean that there's something bad about the tree? These are two different ideas. Also, about the spiritual flow. Where does that flow come from? Does it come from a holy source or an unholy source? So again, there's a tree that let's say we are not allowed to eat because it was planted 2 years ago. Does it mean that the tree itself is problematic? There's a prohibition on the tree? Or the tree is 100% kosher? I am not allowed to eat from it. Or if we see, let's say, a davar acher, if we see a pig, right? So we're not allowed to eat it. Is it because the davar acher is prohibited, or I am not allowed to benefit from it. So when it comes to D'Oraisa, when it comes to the laws of the Torah, the object itself is problematic. And that means that the source of life that it's gaining from is from the klippas, from the external forces. That is Gimel klippas atmeos, the impure flow that comes to give life to those objects. On the other hand, when it comes to Isur Derabanan, for example, on Shvius, we are not allowed to plant and we're not allowed to grow crops. Then there's Isur Sfichim. Sfichim is those plants that grow by themselves. So also with that, we're not allowed to do business. You're allowed to eat them, but you're not allowed to do business. You're not allowed to make profit out of that. But that is just the Rabbanan, because it grows by itself. So the Torah says it's okay. So there, the flow that comes from Shamayim to give it chayus, to give it energy, to bring it to life, is not unholy. It's not impure. It's holy, but I am not allowed to use it. I'm not allowed to consume it. On the other hand, when it comes, so this is the difference between the Dorais and the Rabbanan, again, in relation to the idea that our mitzvahs today, that the Torah tells us about them, they are special mitzvahs. They are unlike the mitzvahs of the others. They are not just reach, it's not just smell, but it's shemen turak shmecha, it's the actual oil that is connected to the mitzvah. And that's why the mitzvahs, they have kedusha. They have holiness within the mitzvah itself. Okay. What is another example to this idea is the story of Avraham Avinu, and the fact that Avraham Avinu was very much into Hachnosas Orchim. He was a big performer of Hachnosas Orchim. The Midrash tells us about it, and we know that also from the story of the Bris Milah, right? So he had his Bris Milah, and Hashem did not want to trouble him, so Hashem made sure that it would be so hot that no one went out to travel on that day. But then Hashem saw that he's upset, that he's sad. So he brought 3 angels to Avraham Avinu, and that's the famous story, Vayikach Hanar, taking and making 3 tongues, and a whole ganze Maaseh shechted 3 cows for those 3 angels. And the question is, so we're not going to speak about specifically Baltashis, but did he, or maybe we will speak also about Baltashis, but it's the same question. Was Avraham Avinu cheated? Did he fulfill the mitzvah of Hachnosas Orchim or not? He left the Shechina. We learn from that Gedai Hachnosas Orchim Yosem Mekabalas Pnei Shechina, that to welcome guests into your house and to help them is greater than Kabbalas Pnei Shechina. It's greater than speaking to Hashem himself. Why? Because Avraham Avinu told Hashem, hold on for one moment, they are guests, I've got to greet them. But wait a second, they weren't really guests. They were angels. They didn't really need your hospitality. They didn't need your food. They were there just to help you out. So, or to your question is even more extent, so does that mean that Avraham Avinu did about Tashchis? So if you think about what is the Geder, what is the idea of the mitzvahs before Matan Torah, it's not a problem at all. Today, if an angel comes over to you and he wants to, and you are, he is your guest, so if he's an angel, he doesn't really need your hospitality. You're not really helping him, so you can't leave the Shechina. You can't just shecht for him a cow. It's about tashchis. Because he is not 100% benefiting from it.
But you don't know that.
So that's another question. What about if a person doesn't know? But klape shmaya, afterwards, after the person actually did perform that mitzvah. So it's a machshava taiva. It's definitely a good will. But is it considered, so he's not going to be over on Bal Tashchus because he didn't know. But aliba de'emes in shamayim, is that considered to be a mitzvah or is it a chetzi mitzvah? Half a mitzvah. So for Avraham Avinu, it was a perfect mitzvah because then mitzvahs were to be in a spiritual mitzvah-dika environment. It didn't have to be a home run, as they say. Didn't have to directly benefit the other person. The people, they would call themselves good people. And by the way, then it was very rare. People didn't care about others. So if you were a good person, if you had the good intentions, that was a wow. So it's enough to have a good intention, a good kavanah. That's good enough. They didn't need more than that. However, today, the mitzvah hama'asehu aikar. There could be a yid that sits 2 hours in Beis Midrash, and he thinks about shi'abud hamoach v'alev. He thinks about connecting his heart and his mind to Hashem, and that's the intention of the mitzvah of tefillin. But he does not put on tefillin, that's not a mitzvah.
So you put on tefillin.
Yes.
For 38 seconds.
Yes.
Then they put them aside.
Yes.
And then you go on...
Yeah, so that's what when we go to Yidden outside on the street and we offer them to put on tefillin, you don't know what they did 10 minutes before and you're not sure what they're going to do 10 minutes after. So of course, the Rebbe spoke about it because it was an innovation then. But the Rebbe said that a person comes and puts on tefillin, he's got the minimal kavanah of doing a mitzvah, which is important. That when a person does the tefillin, he shouldn't have in mind that he's just doing whatever Buddha stuff. That's, you have to have a minimal level of knowledge of what you're doing, kavanah. That's the only kavanah that's ma'akev, that you're actually doing a mitzvah. But imagine a person doesn't usually put on tefillin, and one time he comes and he actually goes and puts on tefillin. So of course he's got the meaning in his mind that he's doing fulfilling a mitzvah of Hashem. He's got that basic kavanah, but that's enough for the mitzvah.
So.
And he's makan the mitzvah.
You say Shema, and then you go and...
Yeah. That mitzvah there and then, it was complete. So yes, when a person...
Breslau, they're right.
Yes, in a certain way, yeah, for sure. Nachon.
And
what is Breslau correct?
That each small deed that a person does, that's considered to be a mitzvah. Can lift him up, can bring him to a high level. We don't know the value of a mitzvah. One thing it says... I'm not guaranteeing that it's only Breslau. I don't think it's only Breslau, but maybe Breslau, it's maybe more that style of people, let's say. But the idea is universal, for sure. Of course, when a person does something with kavanah, so it lights up the mitzvah in a different aspect. Kavanah is very important. Without kavanah, so the mitzvah is it's a broken mitzvah. It's without wings. It's a sad mitzvah. You want a mitzvah, you want the Shabbos table, you want it to be a Lebedeker Shabbos table. You don't want to just come and eat the food and that's it. It's got to be a Lebedeker, it's got to have the kavanah.
You can limit, absolutely.
Okay.
That's saying a great tired league.
Oh. Yeah, so that's Lebedeker for first.
Come on.
So back to Avraham Avinu. Was he cheated in some way? No. He had the intention to do a mitzvah. In his mindset, in his emotions, he was doing a complete mitzvah. The other side didn't benefit from it. That's not the meaning of mitzvahs. Mitzvahs.
What do you mean the other side didn't benefit?
The angels, they didn't actually eat. You didn't actually get guests into your home. For Seder, who says that I need guests to do Hafnasa Sarfin? today, when we know that the Ikar is Hamaiseh Ikar, the result, we want to look at the end result, bottom line, Tachlis. Tachlis, were there guests that were hungry and now they're not hungry? No, these are angels, they were never hungry. So today, it's a shaila about the mitzvah, whether it would be considered a complete achnosus orphan. That's why it says, by the way, in Shemona Esrei, and we've got to have this in mind. It says, Goimel chasadim tovim, that a person does good kindness. Chasadim tovim. Why doesn't it just say Goimel chasadim? That a person does kindness.
You must also receive it. It's not enough that he's giving it to you. You must also.
Oh, so in other words, the kindness, they have to be good. Sometimes you can be kind, but it doesn't help the other person. And this is a person, I don't know, a person wants to do kindness. He gives you a lift. He'll give you a lift, he'll give you a ride. You end up in a different place, even further. And from there, you don't even know how to get to wherever you need. So the intentions are great. He wanted to help you. But it wasn't chasadim tovim. The chesed wasn't tov. That's why we have a responsibility, right? So it's not just about the good deeds, the good intentions, the good mindset. That's very nice that there are good people in the world. Right? But we want to get Hamaseh Waikar. We want the end result to be positive, to be good. So that's it has to do also with organizations, that sometimes they have very good intentions, but they've got to make sure that the person at the end, that Imamashi benefits from it. Then we have the third type of mitzvah. We actually started off with that type of mitzvah. The mitzvahs that the Gentiles are obligated to do. Sheva mitzvahs menach. And here I'll tell you a secret that maybe they shouldn't know about. But a goy, a Gentile that does not fulfill one of the mitzvahs, chayav misa. There's one punishment. That, and it's only death.
Doesn't apply anymore, unfortunately.
Doesn't apply anymore. We're waiting for Mashiach so they can relax in the meantime.
We can relax.
And we can relax. Why is it so strict, such a harsh punishment? What are their mitzvahs? Every minach chai for it. I can understand not to kill, adultery, worshipping idols. These are mitzvahs that we are also punishable by death. And you can understand if there's going to be a place that people are going to murder, etc. You can say, okay, there's room to punish them by death because we don't want a wilde Welt. But what about Ever Minachai, which is being cruel to animals? Why do you punish a person by death? What about the mitzvah of dinim, that they are obligated to have courts and to judge people? And that includes all the civil, according to many opinions, that includes all the civil laws of Ben Adam L'Chavero, right? Not to harm anyone, not to damage anyone's property, etc. The laws of the Shomrim, we learned about it in Parshas Mishpatim, the laws of paying someone the salary that he's
supposed to. If he takes a sheep, you kill him.
So he takes a sheep, you kill him. like in America.
Yes. Why?
Sorry?
No death penalty.
No death penalty. Yeah.
And there is one, but they can't.
Someone last week. Yes, last week.
There wasn't enough people.
If someone's on your property, you are allowed to shoot him or something like that.
Oh, by nitrogen. Nitrogen.
Yes. Why?
Why? Okay, so that's the question. And the answer that is brought in Chassidus is that the definition of their mitzvahs are mitzvahs of loy letoihu bera'a ela l'sheves yitzar. When Hashem created the world, He did not create the world to become toihu, to become chaos, but to become a miyushav dika world, to become a world that is, how do we say miyushav? Inheritable or something like that.
So they are more punishable than us.
Sorry?
They are more punishable than we are.
In a certain way, yes.
Well, not in a certain
In-
way.
They have less mitzvahs. We have many more mitzvahs, but those mitzvahs that they do have, the purpose is one. It's not to bring high lights into the world. It's not to make the world into a better place. It's to keep the world. Sorry?
Inhabitable.
Inhabitable. I was looking for that word. Thank you. To make it a world inhabitable that people can live like mentions. That's it. So the moment they do something against the law, the definition of that is turning the world into chaos.
You are hungry.
And if a person turns the world into chaos, death is a result. It's not a punishment.
You are hungry.
So
You take a peach from your friend's garden.
so if that's
They
a
kill you.
yeah,
Is that right?
I don't think that's right. I think that it has to go in front of the dinim, and then the judge has to use his common sense. When is a case that is 100% considered to be, by the way, when it comes to Avodah Zarah, they have Avodah Zarahs that they're allowed to worship. They're allowed to shituf. They're allowed to believe in shituf, which is to believe that that Hashem is the God of all gods. Like Bilam, Eloika Deloikaya, that they are allowed to. And also when it comes to arayas, to adultery, not all the sins that we are not allowed, they are not allowed. It's much more narrow, but the punishment is much more severe. Why? Because the purpose of those mitzvahs is that the world should be a world without chaos, without balagan, so people can live.
We can have balagan.
Sorry,
We can have.
we can have
They
balagan.
cannot.
They cannot.
We can.
Okay, it's a good point.
What other gods are you talking about?
Sorry.
What other?
Let's say I don't want to go into that exactly, but believing that there's some kinds of that the moon can perform, can give certain shefa. So they are allowed to believe that the moon has its own like authority in a certain way. It has to listen to Hashem, but it has its responsibility. We know that whatever we do, there's we know that it's like just kegarzen b'yad hafotza, which means it's like today they have restaurants that there's no waiter. There's a robot that goes, they put the food, and the robot goes directly to your seat.
It spills the
So
coffee.
spills the coffee out on the way. They're still working on that. So you're not going to tip that, right? You're going to say thank you, Mr. Robot.
You have to.
No.
You have to tip them.
That's it. So,
There's actually a controversy about that.
right. So
People do talk politely to robots. Just instinctively.
instinctively,
You
right?
don't want to interrupt, you don't want to be polite.
Right.
It's a machine.
Right. Right.
Get out of here.
So it's interesting, this whole idea of robots. So how much of a responsibility the robot has? Zero.
Don't make it for the robot. Make it for yourself. To be polite.
Oh,
You get robocallers on the telephone. It's not a person, it's a machine. You have to be polite.
Yes.
Well, you know what the
My wife is for yourself. I'm not polite.
oh.
It's a machine.
So that is like the mitzvahs of before Matan Torah. That why does sometimes there's these people that are goimel chasadim. But why do they do the chasadim? It's for themselves. They have to, like Avram. Avram, he was in pain. It's not that he wasn't in pain, but he had this energy of doing chesed. And there are those people. They are tzaddikim. They are tzaddikim. But they do it more for themselves than for the other. The biggest kunz in a chesed is to think, wait a second, what does he really need? I can give him money, but sometimes he doesn't need money. He needs a kind word. He needs an invitation. He needs to go out somewhere, whatever it is. So that is the difference between before Matan Torah and after. Yes.
7 Noahide laws, right?
Yeah.
Are all contained in the 10th commandment. There's nothing in the Noahide laws. It's not in the 10th.
There is.
They're not for live room.
Yeah, that's not there. That's not there.
Oh.
And dinim is not there per se. But by the way, they have to keep, and this is what people ask, are the Gentiles going to merit the world to come? So if it's a Chassid Umot HaOlam, which means, what is a Chassid Umot HaOlam? If he performs the 7 Noahide laws, in that case, he will merit some kind of part in the world to come. And those laws, he has to keep them not because they are universal laws, but because they were given to us by Moshe Rabbeinu at Mount Sinai. That's what the Rambam says, that a Gentile should not keep the laws because they just make sense, but because they were given to Moshe Rabbeinu by Mount Sinai. And that's why I accept this yoke, the same way as the Jews accept the yoke of El Malchus Shamayim at Mount Sinai. They also accept the yoke of performing those 7 Noahide laws.
But then it's 12 commandments.
No, just 7. Not the
Okay,
general.
In the world, I would say, except for 10 commandments, also.
So, okay, so that they're not obligated.
Okay.
That's just the main event. But on the side, there was also the 7 Noahide laws that were meant for them. Why is it so important? We spoke about this last week in Parshas Mishpatim, that if you do it because you understand it, so in many, many cases, it's going to lead to a bad place. You'll say, well, in this case, I am allowed to take from my friends. I can be like Robin Hood. I can take from the rich and I can give it to the poor. Is that okay? So that's where we have to listen to the Torah, and that's why they are obligated to do the mitzvah. So, because of Matan Torah, not because it's just universal and understood in humans' common sense.
A good Christian could follow the 10 commandments and still not be good.
Sorry?
A good Christian.
Yeah. He can follow the 10 commandments. And,
Oxymoron.
yeah.
Oxymoron.
But I'm just saying.
And he's not good enough, for sure. So there are certain things, like some people say there's a whole discussion, like kibbud and respecting parents. Is that a mitzvah of the Noahide laws? So there's a whole discussion. Some people say yes, it's included in the dinim that a person is obligated to do. Others say no. There's no per se mitzvah. If a person wants to be good in general for himself or values, moral values, they are entitled to moral values. The Torah does not dismiss general moral values. If people want to be ethical, it's good. But over and above that, they've got to know that there's 7 mitzvahs. That's the chok bal yavo. That's the obligation.
A few minutes ago,
Yeah.
you said because we're waiting for Mashiach, you don't have to worry right now. What was that all about?
That was about the act of the punishment, because they are punishable by death if they don't keep the mitzvahs. So we don't have the authority to actually carry out those punishments. When Mashiach will come, part of what Mashiach will do, again, it's not for the purpose of, they say today, oh, these Mashiachim Hazuyim, like when they try to describe the right part of the government, so they say these Mashiach guys, Meshuganas. Wait a second, why do you think that Mashiach is such a bad idea? It's like such an extreme idea. What is Mashiach? You think about it. They will take all the weapons and they will make that into
Ushers.
and
This is not exactly what Ben Gvir means. To put
so
aside,
maybe he doesn't.
to put aside.
So maybe he doesn't know what Mashiach is. But what Mashiach his primary mission is to bring the world to an ethical point, to a righteous point, not to a wilder point. And this is what we're doing when we're fighting in the war in Gaza. So, and perhaps that's what Ben Gvir means, is, again, I'm not saying that 100%, because it's not according to the Torah, not 100% everything that he does is Kodesh Kodashim. But in theory, what we are doing is we're fighting a war of justice, not for us only, but for them as well, to teach them what's right and wrong. There's a kid, you see a video of an IDF soldier holding a 4-year-old, 5-year-old child that's shivering, shaking. There's gunshots all around. We're not fighting only for ourselves, we're fighting for them. But we've got to tell that to the world. And to tell the world that that's why we have to do everything. And that is Mashiach. What is Mashiach? To come and to behead half of the world? No. To enforce us to do what's wrong. We all know what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. And we all know that we need this push, this drive, this Mashiach vibe to go ahead with it. What does a Yid want already? A Yid wants the ability to keep Torah and mitzvahs in a good way. We don't want anything else. We're not dreaming of an immoral life. We want a moral life, but that we have a bit of help. That's what is Galus. God says that the emes is lacking, that there's no emes. We want the emes to be revealed. The moment the emes will be revealed, we'll be drawn to it. We'll do it. That's why Chabad speaks about Mashiach, and that's why we shouldn't be afraid of Mashiach. Because that's the real Mashiach. Mashiach is not something scary. It's not something that's going to terrorize us in one way or another. We all have the Mashiach inside us because we know what's right and what's wrong. Sometimes we cannot keep up to what we know that's what's right. Mashiach is going to help us with that. That's it. That's the story of the mitzvahs, the 3 types of the mitzvahs. And Bezrat Hashem, we should be zocher to the coming of Mashiach.